Okay, brace yourself, because what is went down in Indiana isn't just a team decision or minor disagreement between coach and player. No, this is bigger. We are watching in real time a battle for power play out in the middle of the WNBA season, and the crown jewel in this war, Caitlin Clark. Yes, that Caitlin Clark, the WNBA, a most electric star, college basketball's golden girl, and argue with the single most important figure in women's sports right now, was rated suit up, rejoin the team, and hit the hardwood. But the Indiana Fever, led by head coach Stephanie White, they shut it down. If you're here for the real story and not to filter Verge, and subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe. No warning, no clarity, no satisfying explanation. And now fans are furious, analysts are baffled, and Clark, she's stuck courtside, medically clear, but should she jiggly benched, while the internet spirals into theory frustrations and a whole lot of side eyes at the Fever front office. Let's unpack does care from the top, from everything we've seen, practice footage, player interviews, and yes, those heart-wrenching social media posts. Caitlin Clark with ready. She wasn't limping around or going through the motions. She was out there putting up shots, running drills, joking with teammates, her energy radiant, her game still elite. And yet no minutes, no game action, no chance to help or team chase the playoff. Instead, we got vague statements from Stephanie White and Fever officials citing long-term health and player preservation, which would make sense if Caitlin was medically cleared. But she was, and not just cleared to walk or stretch, she was cleared to play. So naturally, the question explode across every timeline: why bench her now? And listen, this isn't just about a player being held out. This is about a generational talent being forced to the sideline lines while the team spins it as a precaution. But fans, don't forget, and definitely don't buy weak excuses. Let's be honest, you don't spend an entire season hyping up Caitlin Clark as a savior. Your franchise only pour from the spotlight when again start to really matter, not without a real reason, and protecting our future does. Don't fly when she's telling the world she wants to play her post. I missed the so bad he like a gut punch. No press release could compete with that raw emotion that wasn't a PR crafted message, that was real, that was a competitor akin to get back in a fight. And it only fueled the theory that this was never about better health. It was about control, the narrative control, the brand control of Caitlin Clark. Because here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. Caitlin isn't as a rookie anymore. She's a force. She's not waiting around for permission to be great. She's already there. And that kind of spotlight, it changes things. The Indiana Fever might have thought they could ease or into stardom, give her a year to develop, keep the expectations manageable, maybe to get slows of the team, doesn't get overwhelmed by the media storm. But Caitlin came, and like a wildfire, sold out arenas, jersey sales through the roof, national coverage, and suddenly it wasn't just Indiana Fever basketball, it was a Caitlin Clark experience. So what happens when your rookie becomes a face? League overnight, tension, quite resentment, a scramble for control. Because let's not sugar-coat it, this league has never had to navigate a situation like this before. A player this popular, this young, does dominant. It's uncharted territory, and for traditional coaching staff and front offices use a slow burns and controlled development. Clark's rise feels like a rocket they can't steer, which is why so many people believe his decision to bench wasn't about safety. It was about power dynamics. Think about it. You have a player that drives ratings, ticket sales, and national headlines, a player with the kind of platform that rivals any male athlete in the game, and the team chooses to sit her not because he's injured, but because they decide it was better. For that sounds less like leadership and more like gatekeeping, and sends a terrible message to players all over the league. Even if you're healthy, ready, and willing, you still don't get to decide, not even when you're Caitlin Clark. This whole thing reeks of the classic "we know what's best for you" playbook, the kind of patronizing guard thinking that plagued women's sports for years. But here's the kicker. Hawks fans aren't buying it, not even for a second, and honestly neither is the rest of the league. Because if we're being brutally honest, the Fever needed her absence hasn't as cause wins, it's cause of momentum viewership dips, ticket demand slows, the team loses buzz, energy, edge. Because love her or hate her, Caitlin Clark is a WNBA right now. She's a trending topic, she's a viral clip, she's reason people tune in. And the fever bends that is not just confusing, it brands suicide. But the more this plays out, the more becomes clear that this isn't as a team misstep, it's a league-wide reckoning because of the dub. WNBA wanted to capitalize on his golden moment. It wants to turn Caitlin Clark hype into actual long-term growth, that it needs a let her play, it needs a trust their instincts, her readiness, and her ability to elevate the product on the court, not just treat her like a marketable mascot who could be wheeled out for media but tucked away when the stakes get too high. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. If the WNBA isn't careful, they'll go fumble the biggest opportunity they've ever had. They'll alienate fans, they'll stifle stars, and they'll send a message to every young athlete watching it, even at the top of your game. Someone else still controls your narrative, and Caitlin Clark, she deserves better. She deserves to be trusted, respected, given the same agency male stars are granted without question. Can you imagine a scenario? We'll have LeBron James is clear to play and the Lakers say, you know what, let's sit this one out for your loss. Long-term well-being, exactly, it wouldn't happen. And it shouldn't happen here because Clark isn't fragile. She's not confused. She's a grown woman, a professional athlete and competitor. And if she says she's really play, then unless there's a catastrophic medical reason, and we've seen no evidence of that, you let her play. Period. So where we go from here, one of two directions. The team finally lets Clark return, maybe after week of mounting public pressure and internal damage control. They spin it as progress or clearing final hurdles. And she steps back on a court. The funders applause. The fever double down, keep her benched. Ride as narrative into oblivion and risk not only losing fan support, but Caitlin trust. And that last one, that's the real danger, because once a player feels sidelined, dismissed, or silenced, they don't forget. And when the contract expired, when free agency rolls around, when the cameras are still there and the loyalties worn thin, they leave. And if the Fever lose Caitlin Clark after all this, game over. So now we wait, we watch, we scroll through cryptic posts and read between the lines. We hold our breath every time the starting lineup drops, and we wonder where they do the right thing. Because if not, they're not just benching Caitlin Clark, they're benching the future of women's basketball. Because now that Caitlin Clark's benching has gone from head-scratcher to full-blown sports scandal, let's get into what's really at stake, not just for Clark, not just the Indiana Fever, but for the entire future of women's professional basketball. Because when you sideline the biggest name in your league, the ripple effects aren't as local, they're global. And whether Stephanie White and the Fever realize it or not, they've done more than hold a player out of a game. They have ignited a conversation that cracking open the deepest, oldest tension in women's sports. Who really hope the power players or management? Let's start here. The WNBA has always lived in a strange little space. It's a league fighting for expansion, fighting for investment, fighting for respect. And then boom, along comes Caitlin Clark, the most marketable, visible, and talked about player in generations. The dream come true, right, you'd think, but with that attention comes disruption. Because the league didn't ganache build Clark's brand. They didn't create her with savvy marketing or slow burn development. She arrived as a fully formed cultural event. She brought the storm with her. All the WNBA had to do was not good the way, and yet here we are. This isn't just mishandling, this is a case study. And how institutions struggle to adapt when they're no longer the most powerful voice in a room. Because when a rookie comes with more individual influence and a franchise she's playing for, traditional systems panic. They don't know how to scale, they don't know how to share the spotlight. So what do? They default to control, delay, deflect. They call it long-term thinking. They say things like load management and health protocols. But let's stop playing. This isn't about health. If Caitlin Clark is in practice drills, scrimmage, and working out posts, I missed us so bad. This isn't about health. This is about image management. It's about team leadership. Try mold a narrative instead of responding to it, and fans can smell it. The media can smell it. Even other players can smell it. Which brings us to the locker room. Let's get real for a second. How do you think, as is planned behind closed doors, you got Caitlin Clark medically cleared, itching to play, sitting in street clothes where the team's playoff chances hang in the balance? Do you honestly believe every is cool with that? Because here's the tricky part. Locker rooms are fragile ecosystems. They're built on trust, on unity, on the idea that everyone is fighting for the same goal. And when your best weapon is bench for reasons no one can fully explain, that unity starts to fray. Even have no one say it out loud. You know some where teammates are questioning what's going on, wondering if it's about basketball or politics, wondering if the decisions being made are really in the team's best interest or in someone else's. And if even one player starts losing faith and leadership, it spreads like wildfire. Now zoom out again. Let's talk optics. This is happening in the middle of a major moment for women's sports, from college nil deals to Olympic viewership, the brand partnerships. The momentum is real, visibility is up, money is on the table, audiences are finally paying attention. So to see the sport's most elected figure held back, not because of injury, not because of poor performance, but because of a strategic decision, that's not just a bad look, it's a crisis of credibility. You can, as fans, invest in a product that won't even let its stars shine. And here's where it gets even messy. Young athletes are watching this, future stars, high school prodigies, college players with dreams of going pro. They're watching the Caitlin Clark saga and asking, is that what happens when you get to the league? Is that the trade-off? You give your heart to the game, you become a generational talent, you build a fan base, carry a franchise, elevate entire league. And then when you're finally ready to compete, your own team benches you for reasons they won't explain. That's not just disappointing, that's discouraging. And let's not forget, yet Caitlin Clark has been nothing but professional to this entire mess. No outbursts, no cryptic shade, no diva antics. She's carried herself with grace, even when she had every reason to speak up and burn the whole system down. And that silence, that composure, that leverage. Because make no mistake, Clark is watching. She's paying attention. She's not just a player, she's a business, she's a brand. And this situation has undoubtedly changed how she views Uzi organization. She's tied to, remember, rookie contract don't last forever. If Indiana thinks he can treat Clark like a commodity and expect blind loyalty down the line, they are deeply mistaken. Because when that contract clock ticks down and free agency comes calling, you better believe every team, the league, and some outside, it will be waiting with open arms and charter jets. And what will Indiana have left? An empty arena, a fan base they lied to, and a reputation they'll spend years trying to rebuild. Let's pivot to the media circus, because at the whole storm of its own, Caitlin Clark sidelining didn't just spark outrage. It created a narrative vacuum, and when teams don't fill the vacuum or transparency, the media does it for them. Every sports talk show, podcast, and blog is descending this move. Some are defending it barely, but most they're calling it what it looks like, a sabotage, a benching not rooted in concern, but in fear. Fear being upstaged by your own star, and the longer the fever refuses to clarify, the more that narrative becomes the official one. That's the danger. Silence. It leaves space for speculation to become fact. Which brings us to a very simple, very uncomfortable reality. Caitlin Clark outgrew this franchise bin, for they even figured out how to use her. She walked in the door, once in a generation athlete, and instead of celebrating that, they've tried to shrink her into their outdated system. Manager, contain her, control her. But you can't manage a storm you ride or levels you in of India. It doesn't change course fast. That's exactly what's going to happen. So let's play this out. What happens when Caitlin Clark finally returns? Does the team pretend nothing happened? Did a sticker in limited minutes, claiming they're easing her? And do they let her take over and pray distract from the weeks of silence and confusion? Or do they double down on the decision, keep her bench to the playoff, and try to spin it as strategic foresight? There's no good option left. Every road forward is scorched because they forgot the most important rule. Cool and sports PR. When your star players rate to shine, get out of the way now. They made themselves villain in a story they didn't even write. The fans are on Clark's side, the media's on Clark's side. And unless something changes fast, Clark's next chapter might be written somewhere else. So here we are, a star bench a franchise flailing a lead forced to confront the growing pains of his own rising success. And Caitlin Clark, still waiting, still ready, still dangerous. The question now is whether she'll play again. It's who deserve her when she does. As in, if you're the Indiana Fever, you're not just managing a player anymore, you're trying to contain a full-blown cultural reckoning. Let's start with what no one seemed to want to say out loud. Caitlin Clark has become untouchable, and yet she's being treated like a liability. Think about how insane that is. You got the most talked about rookie in all professional sports, men's or women's drawing fans would never watch WNBA game before, and somehow the takeaway from Indiana front offices, let's ease off the gas. Really, you don't pull your quarterback, and for quarter because you're worried he's getting too good, you don't sideline your headliner during the car to finale because the lights are too bright. And yet, that's what's playing out here. Caitlin isn't being protected. She's being suppressed under the very thin veil of long-term health. But what's really long-term here, because of the Fever, think they're playing some for DHS with Caitlin future, they're go find them so. Cells without a queen on the board, and quick, let's look at how our impact is being weaponized. There's a subtle undercurrent in sports, especially in women's leagues, that when actually becomes too big, too influential to send to the brand, they somehow stop being a team player. Their suspicion, a need to humble a narrative of she becoming more than the game, and Caitlin, she's in that zone. You already heard the whispers about media distractions, about how one player can carry team, about how maybe it's better for fuel develop without all the noise. But here's the question, who created the noise? It wasn't Caitlin. She didn't beg ESPN to run a daily update on her. She didn't ask for every ticket to be sold out 2 weeks in advance. She didn't build a hype machine. She is the hype machine, and punishing her for that, intentionally or not, is pure sabotage. And here's something we don't talk about enough. Ben Truss, because his decision, it's not just about basketball. It's about believability. People feel lied to. Fans were told Caitlin was a future, that she'd be the reason the show up, buy tickets, where jerseys care. And now that she's here ready to go, the team is pulling her back in. Imagine buy a concert ticket to see Beyonce, and then being told she's backstage, totally fine. But we decided not to let it before it. For the long-term health of her vocals, you demand a refund, and most importantly, you'd lose trust. That's what's happening in Indiana. Fans aren't just disappointed, they feel duped. They feel like they've invested in a story that being edited in real time by people were scared of his momentum. And now the conspiracy theories are thriving, because when leadership doesn't offer clarity, people fill in the blanks, and let's be real, those blanks are getting wild. Something Clark is being benched to protect the egos of other players. Others believed about hiding internal dysfunction. Before the playoffs, there are whispers of behind-the-scenes disagreements between coaching staff and player agents. Some even suggest leagues involved trying to spread attention to other markets to avoid overclocking the brand. Are these theories extreme? Maybe Bonnie only official line is would do what's best for, and she is out here saying I miss the so bad, the mixed messaging the entire organization into a credibility nightmare. And here's another wrinkle, what message does this and other stars, and making you think future top draft picks aren't watching this? They absolutely are, and the takeaway is in good. If Caitlin Clark can't have agency over own return despite her resume, her recovery, and her readiness, what hope does anyone else have? Suddenly, the WNBA isn't just battling for respect from the outside, it's fighting a reputation crisis within, because you can't piss the league as a new era of empowerment and visibility. When your biggest star is being told to sit down and wait her turn, and here's where he gets even messy as sponsors. Let's talk dollars, because Caitlin Clark isn't just an athlete, she's a marketing juggernaut. Break are lining up ad deals, product launches, appearances, the licensing, the whole package. And here's the thing, those contracts are tied visibility. She plays equals a pay, so if Clark isn't playing, that affects more than just ticket sales, complicated business deals. It changes brand X, older metrics, it shifts our Y. And if you think corporate partners are going to sit quietly while their golden goose is benched for no clear reason, think again. This isn't just a basketball issue, it's a business liability, and now every brand aligned with Caitlyn is asking the same question. The fans are, why isn't she playing? Let's imagine a different version of the story for a moment. One where the Fever let Clark return, even with limited minutes. One where the team trusts their instincts, managers overload, and respects her readiness. One where fans to watch their star rise in real time, even if it's not perfect. That version. It builds trust, it strengthens loyalty, it shows a league adapting, not resisting, and more importantly, it avoids as disaster instead. We've been handed the player's property narrative all over again, the idea that athletes, especially female athletes, don't really own their career. Years that someone else always gets a final say no matter how strong, smart, or ready they are, and that's the real heartbreak, because Caitlyn Clark has done everything right. She's delivered for her team, she's inspired an entire generation, she's raised value of the league, and in return she's been benched without cause. So what happens next? That's the million-dollar question. Maybe the Fever or reverse